if you have the right philosophy, you will find opportunities as you go through the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
That's the shortcut. That's the biggest hack.
I have an old-fashioned belief that I only should expect to make money in things that I understand.
Rise and shine, it's espresso time. Hey, Believe Nation, I am not a morning person, but when you start your day with a powerful routine that inspires you, like watching one of these videos, it will change your life. So let's start your day off right together. Grab your coffee, know that I believe in you, and get ready for a shot of espresso from Warren Buffett.
I wake up every morning.
Espresso, keep me going.
I wake up every morning.
I was wondering if you have any stock tips for any of the students. You know, we're all trying to make a little living.
I didn't think they taught that at Georgetown. The best investment I ever made, well, I bought a book in 1949 by a fellow named Ben Graham called The Intelligent Investor. I don't remember what I paid. But aside from what I paid for my 2 marriage licenses, that was the best investment I ever made. It's very important to have the right framework. You need to have an approach to investing that's sound. And Graham's approach is simple, but some people adopt to it, and which I did immediately, and most people don't. But if you have the right philosophy, you will find opportunities as you go through the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And frankly, you're most likely to find them when in periods like 5 years ago when we were having the panic. I mean, stocks sell at silly prices from time to time. Most stocks at one time or another sell at very silly prices. And it doesn't take a high IQ to figure out that they're cheap, but it does take a temperament that's willing to step up and actually act. I tell people, if they're going in the investment business, if you got 160 IQ, sell 30 points to somebody else because you won't need it. I mean, I figured out very early, you don't have to be that smart in this business, which is fortunate, but you do have to have the right temperament. And you have to be able to ignore what other people are saying and simply look at the facts and decide, is this stock which is selling at X worth 2X? And occasionally you'll find things like that. And when you don't find them, you don't do anything. So that's my generalized stock tip, no names.
I'll make it simpler. Just buy Bank of America and you'll be set.
The best framework for success is to model success. If there was ever a shortcut, if there ever was a hack besides just doing the work and grinding it out to get to your goals, is to model success. It's to find the people who've done exactly what you are trying to do, learn from their story, see how they got started, right? I don't care how Warren Buffett makes an extra $1 million now. How did he get started? Apply those lessons to your situation and watch your goals happen. Watch your business explode. Watch your life get better by modeling success. I think a lot of times we feel like we have to be creative geniuses as entrepreneurs. We feel like we have to have all the answers. At least I used to feel this way. I used to feel like I always need to have all the answers. I had to come up with the next creative thing myself, and I would rack my brain to try to find the next idea, the next business idea, the next marketing idea, the next promotion idea, the next idea had to come from me. I don't know why. Maybe it was just insecurity, maybe it was just ignorance, but I felt like I had to come up with everything myself. And I also felt like I was a smart person. You know, I mean, I never did super well in school, getting B's and C's for most of my life until finally my last year I got straight 90s, thanks to a very awesome teacher who gave me guidance and mentorship and support. But I felt like I wasn't a dummy. And when I started my business, I felt like I was a dummy. I felt just like an idiot. Like I was trying so many things. I was working so hard. Almost every waking hour really was working on my business, and nothing was happening. I was not making money, $300 a month, and just nothing seemed to be going. And it was really defeating because up until that point, anytime I put effort against something, when you put effort against something, you expect to get a little better. You expect to get some kind of results, right? Not just trying and failing, like no progress. It's the progress that is the killer. And I eventually quit on my business partner because I just felt worthless as a human. I was tired of waking up every day and going to work and not getting results and feeling useless. It was really, at the end of the day, I wasn't making things happen, and I didn't know how to make things happen. And because of that, I felt useless. If I wasn't putting in effort, you can understand, right? Like, if you're not really putting in the work, you can understand why you're not getting results. You might not be happy with it. You might not be happy that you're not further ahead, but you can understand why you're not further ahead because you're not really putting in the effort, right? If that's you can understand that. It makes sense. But when you're putting in the effort and you're trying every idea that comes to mind and you're still not getting any kind of results, nothing, not even measly results, it's so defeating. And so I quit on my partner, and the next morning I woke up and it was the idea of modeling success that saved my whole business. I woke up the next day and I said, I can't quit. I can't quit yet. I'm going to regret this. If I quit now, I'm going to regret this. I don't want to look back on this moment in my life when I'm an old man at 40, I'm 41 soon, and say, man, what a waste of my life because I quit too soon. So that fear of regret gave me the courage to keep going, but I still don't have a strategy. I still don't know what to do, what else to do. And so I told myself, I can't keep doing it the way I'm doing it because this obviously is not working and I'm tired of hating my life. And then the moment of desperation led to the moment of inspiration where I said, who else has done this before? Somebody must have done this. Somebody must have built a software company before. I can't be the first guy to try to do this. And while there was nobody in my field, we had biotech software company. There was no big biotech software company to model. There were no stories of how they started. So I thought of Bill Gates, who started Microsoft. It was the only software company that came to mind immediately. And so I went to go research Bill Gates. And his strategy was through partnerships. And I applied that to my company. And in a short amount of time, had my first sale for $13,500. And that was money. That was, I don't know what Nina's doing here. She's trying to get the dogs to pay attention. Oh, she got it. There's Timo. He's noticing. He's not quite sure what's going on. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Is he gonna take it? Oh, what are you doing? You just trying to tease the dogs?
Yeah.
All right. So Bill Gates did it through partnerships. I did it through partnerships. It was almost the exact same way. I took 80% of his strategy and then just the last 20% was customizing it to my business, my industry. And it worked. And more important than that first deal of $13.5K, I had a strategy I could use again and again and again and again. So all the time in me trying and failing, new idea failing. If I had just asked myself, who's done this before and how can I model them, it would have shortcut my path. It did shortcut my path, but I wish I had done it a little bit sooner. And so since then, my default model has been model success. Whenever you don't know what to do, who can you model? And you can take different things from different people. So if you want to learn how to be a visionary, you can take that from Steve Jobs. If you want to learn how to be a great father or husband, you take that from whoever you think is the best father or husband, that you know or in the world. You take different things from different people to be the best version of you. That's the shortcut. That's the biggest hack. You don't have to feel like you're all alone. You don't have to feel like you have to do this all by yourself, because we have this image we project of, we want to be confident and know what we're doing and have our business. But meanwhile, we have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea. And there's nobody guiding us. And we didn't go to school for this. And our parents don't know what to tell us either. And probably nobody around you really knows what to tell you besides maybe giving you a hug or some support. So the best way to do it is model success. Now, there's a couple ways we can do this. Okay, let me give you some hacks to actually model success. Number one, people in your life. Who are people in your life who have done what you're trying to do, or at least are a little bit ahead of you? And how can you try to spend more time with them? How can you have a coffee to talk about it? If you're trying to be a successful entrepreneur, who's the most successful entrepreneur that you know? Or maybe is in your family, or maybe is an alumni from your school, right? Like, who can you connect with that you have 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from. It may not be your parents, it may not be that close a connection, but a friend of a friend that you can connect with and ask for their advice. Have a coffee and talk to them, right? That's a physical mentor. And don't ask for mentorship, just ask for a cup of coffee. And take that for different areas of your life. You want to have fitness? Great. Who's the healthiest person that you know? Or that somebody knows close to you? You want to have great relationships? Who's got the best relationship with the people that you know? And how can you just grab a coffee and talk about their relationship, right? Doing that, you'll start to get a lot of great ideas, as well as just energy and motivation to go off and do it, because you may not be surrounded by enough of it in your life. Okay, so number 1 are physical mentors. Number 2 are what I call aspirational mentors, people who you can learn from, who you'll never meet. I still haven't met Bill Gates, but I've learned a lot from him. I mean, his strategy changed my entire life, changed the whole. If it wasn't for learning how he started Microsoft, I might be a VP at some bank, like I said I wanted to be in my high school yearbook. That's probably where I'd be right now instead of doing this, right? So you can learn from my videos. This is why I make these videos every day. It's been my mission now for the past however many years, since 2009, of making content to try to allow you to learn from the most successful people on the planet, because I still learn from them. I learn from them, I apply their strategies. I want to learn from Warren Buffett, and as I learn, I share with you guys, and hopefully you learn too. You don't have to ever meet Warren Buffett or Carmichael or Bill Gates or Oprah Winfrey or whoever to learn from them, and surround yourself with them. Because the more that you are listening to Warren Buffett, watching his videos, reading his annual reports, the more that you're around that, the more you start to think like that. The more you start to feel like it's possible, the more you'll have hope and motivation and inspiration to go off and do it, and you'll get specific strategies that you can use to actually apply to your situation. The more you're around it. So make a conscious effort to be around it daily. Because the step number 1 of physical mentors, you're not going to be around them every single day. Probably, right? Maybe you can take an internship and go work with them, but you're probably not going to be around them every single day. So the aspirational mentors, Warren Buffett definitely isn't having you hanging around him every day, but you can do that on your own by watching his videos and reading his books, etc. Right? And then the third kind of mentor I call the hybrid, where you can actually get access to some people through social media now. When somebody's going live on Instagram, or they're going live on Clubhouse, and they're going live on whichever platform is hottest at the moment, there's actually a chance for you to ask them a question. So if you had one question to ask Warren Buffett, what would it be? And if you follow him, maybe he goes live on Clubhouse, maybe he goes live on Instagram, maybe he goes live on YouTube. You get a chance to ask a question. What would that one question be? And if it's not Warren Buffett, there's other people who are going live constantly. People who otherwise you wouldn't have access to, who would have a million gatekeepers to get to. You could ask them one question if you're on the right platform at the right time. So follow them. Follow your heroes. Wait for them to go live. Be inspired by their content. And when they do, be the first to put up your hand. Take that chance, take that opportunity, and you might get your question answered. So you can do it by physical mentors, people you're meeting for coffee. You can do that by aspirational mentors, people you never meet, but you can learn from their content, their videos, their books, etc. And then the hybrid, where maybe you actually get a chance to ask one of your heroes a question in the right format when they're going live. To wrap all that up, it's still understanding that the fastest way to hack your way to success is to model success. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be by yourself. Even though you might feel alone, you might feel by yourself, you don't have to do this all by yourself. You don't have to come up with every genius idea yourself. Whatever problem you're trying to solve, it's already been solved. It's already been solved. Go find that person. Research their story. Understand how they did it. Apply it to your business. Apply it to your life. Apply it to your goals. And watch your dreams start to actually come true. Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy, but before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video, and what is your plan of action for the next week? The science says that when you just watch a video, you get motivated, you get inspired, you have a 35% chance of actually doing something and following through. That, Believe Nation, is not enough. 35% is not enough, we gotta do something. But when you get inspired by watching a video like this, and then you create a plan of action, your chances of following through jump to 91%. And when you commit publicly, like putting your comment down below with your plan, it jumps to 95%. That's what I want for you. I want you to take action. Your dreams are too important. Your life matters. Your mission has to happen. So, question of the day, your biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week, put it down in the comments below, and I'm going to celebrate alongside with you. Also, if you want to have more confidence, self-love, self-belief, check out my 254 series. The science says it can take up to 254 days of consecutive action to build a habit. So I've designed a special free program to help you get it, where I will send you an unlisted video to your email for the next 254 days to shift your self-belief forward. The link to sign up for free is in the description below.
If I ever write a book, it's going to be called Why Smart People Do Dumb Things. My partner says it should be autobiographical. If you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story, and that's what I'm doing every day. I'm assigning myself a story, and then I go out and... So if I give them a whole bunch of money, and they love the money, and they don't love the business, no matter what they tell me, 6 months from now, they'll be gone.
How would you advise people who aren't necessarily going into a career field in which you would make a large base salary, such as like medicine or something like that, maybe performing arts or music? How would you advise us to keep up financially with the rest of the world?
Well, it is true that a market system does not pay as well in some activities as might seem appropriate for the importance of those activities to society. Just take teaching, for example. I mean, teaching does not pay well. And what could be more important? I mean, you've got to be as interested in who the teachers of your children are as who your accountant is, or whatever, or who's winning the heavyweight title of the world, or that sort of thing. But it doesn't pay well, and it's a fundamental choice whether you're going to go into something. For many people, it'd be a fundamental choice whether you're going to go into something you love or something to try and make a lot of money. I think that generally it pays to go with what you love. I think that it's very hard to find people when they get to be my age who say that they've loved what they've done all their life and feel it was very worthwhile, but they're terribly sad they made that choice because they didn't make a lot of money. I don't think anybody's ever said that to me, that they wish they'd gone into something else where they were uncomfortable doing it or didn't enjoy it, didn't feel very productive, but made a lot of money. So I don't think you'll find that. So I would go to work. I would go to work in whatever turns you on. It may turn out that it'll be more profitable than you can think, but almost everybody here will make enough money, unless they get some terrible habits along the way, to do reasonably well. And doing reasonably well in this country really is pretty darn good. I mean, it's not necessary to have huge amounts of money in order to enjoy yourself. I enjoyed myself when I had my $10,000, and I live in the same house that I lived in when I had about that. I bought it 41 years ago. I liked the house then. I like the house now. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a reasonable job, you'll be eating at McDonald's and I'll be eating at McDonald's. So we're at a push on food. I mean, in fact, I hope it's Dairy Queen, actually. And and if you come to Dairy Queen, you'll see me. And you can order anything on the menu I can order, and we both can afford it. You'll wear the same clothes I wear. I'll pay more for my suits, but as soon as I put them on, they look cheap on me. So we'll look about the same. And we'll both live in the same kind of houses. I live in that house from 41 years ago, and it's warm in winter and it's cool in summer and it's comfortable. And you'll live in a house that's similar. And what difference does it make if you have 50 more rooms or guest houses or all that? It'll probably just bring you problems. I mean, you have to worry about the greenskeeper or something when you get through. So I have been in the houses of people where the houses are worth probably 200 times what my house is worth, and I would not be any happier in those houses at all. In fact, I'd be less happy. I just have one more thing to worry about, and the dozens of people around the place, and people quitting, and people stealing from you, and all kinds of things. We'll drive the same kind of car. In fact, you'll probably drive a better car. I drive a car that's about 8 years old. I don't know what it's worth now, but it gets me around fine. I mean, I'm perfectly happy. We'll watch the same television. We'll work on the same computer pretty much. The only difference will be how we travel long distances. I will fly in a plane that's more comfortable than than flying Southwest Airlines or something, which I've got nothing against. But that's the one real big difference. And other than that, I do what I like every day. I hope you'll do what you like every day to do. And I work with nice people. I hope you work with nice people. And there's 24 hours in the day, and those are where the hours go. So great wealth is the tiniest bit different in a real sense than having just a decent income. And to trade a decent income and something you love doing and something where you feel worthwhile doing it for huge wealth where you trade off a lot of your principles would be a terrible mistake.
I was wondering, how do you decide what you invest your time and money in?
Yeah, well, I like to find businesses that have good economics. Now, what are good economics? Well, good economics are a business that has some kind of a moat around it that makes its product or its service or its location or something a little more desirable to the customer than any other sort of comparable product. The number one candy bar in the last 30 or 40 years has been Snickers. People don't fool around with different candy bars. They fool around with different length dresses. They fool around, with all kinds of things. But they don't fool around with candy bars because they figure, they're going to go in and lay out 50 cents or whatever it is and put it in their mouth. And they're not going to, for 50 cents and putting it in your mouth, you're not going to say, I'll lay out 45 cents and put something else in my mouth. So you find that very stable. And we like businesses that we think we can figure out where they're going to be in 10 or 15 years. I don't know where the information technology businesses are going to be in 10 or 15 years. I know where Snickers bars are going to be in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be selling just about the way they do now. I know where Wrigley's gum is going to be in 10 or 15 years. There's not going to be a lot of innovation in chewing gum. The internet's not going to cause people to quit chewing gum either. Gates may think so, but I don't think so. But it's predictability regarding the sustainability of a competitive advantage, something special about a product. When you get to my age, you will not measure how well you've done by how much money you've got. I can guarantee you that. You'll all do fine on money anyway. Think about it. 7 hours a day, you're in a bed. You got exactly the same mattress I've got. If you don't, we'll sell it to you at the furniture mart. We're on a parity. I can't outdo you, in terms of my sleeping enjoyment. You can match it by buying this mattress, which we'll give you a special price on. Just mention my name. We eat at the same places, We eat at Dairy Queen, particularly if you're in my position because we own it. But we eat at McDonald's and Burger King, and when I leave here, I'll stop by a fast food place on the way. So our eating experiences are the same. We travel the same. I had a 10-year-old car up till about a year ago, and it just doesn't make any difference to me. They all work. We live in a place that's warm in the winter and it's cool in the summer, and we watch the Super Bowl on big screen TV. You do it, I do it. We dress more or less the same. I pay more for my clothes, but they look cheap when I put them on. So we're really on a parity. Yeah. So the money isn't going to be that big a deal. Everybody in this country is going to, with the intelligence this group has and the energy you have, you're going to do well. So what's the difference? What really counts? Well, I would say that you will measure, health is enormously important, and that's a matter of a fair amount of luck. So I'm not shortchanging it. I'm just saying you can't do too much about that. But you will measure your success in life by how many, and extent, whether it's the people you want at 70 or whatever the age may be. You'll measure it by how many of them really love you, in the end. You can't, you can't buy love. It doesn't work. You can buy sex, you can buy testimonial dinners, you can buy your name on buildings, you can do all kinds of things. But the only way you get to be, love is to be lovable. It's kind of irritating, actually. If you got a lot of money, it'd be more fun to just write out a check for $1 million. So everybody, from now on loves me. But it doesn't work that way. And in fact, the only way is to be lovable. And I've got this friend who came out of Auschwitz and had at least one member of the family die there. And what is it now? It's 60 years later. She still, when she looks at people, it's a Polish Jew, when she looks at people, the question she asks herself in determining who she really trusts as friends, the one question in her mind is, would they hide me? Now, when you get to be 70, if you've got a lot of people that would hide you, you've had a successful life. I know people who have a tremendous amount of money, no one would hide. Their own kids wouldn't hide them. I mean, they really wouldn't. I mean, their business associates wouldn't, or anybody else. If it really came down to it, you know, they don't have anybody's respect. They've got their attention maybe with money or something of the sort, but nobody loves them. And my friend Tom Murphy at Cap Cities TV, I mean, dozens of people would hide Murph, you know. All kinds of people would hide my wife, you know. Ben Graham, a lot of people would have. My dad would have had a number. And then, like I say, that I can tell you people that, you know, everybody may pay homage to them, and the kids may put up with them and hope they don't change their will or something, but the truth is that nobody would hide them. And if you've got a lot of people that would hide you when you get to be 70, you will have had a very successful life.
You both have several managers working under you, so I was wondering what are some steps that a new entrant into the job market can take to accelerate their journey towards an upper level management position?
Yeah, well, one thing I will tell you that I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, you know, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, you know, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it, that also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you, that's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you know, you don't have to show up other people. You know, you don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
Well, I was lucky that I got started early. I mean, it always helps if you get started early. And my dad happened to be in the investment business, so I would go down to his office on Saturdays. And so at age probably 7 or something, I started reading these books that were around the place. And so I had a 15-year jump on many people in a sense, and that helped a lot. And I was always fascinated by it. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do early, and I think that's a huge advantage too. And then you don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be, when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning. And that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way.
In terms of emotions, it's a truism that in investing, emotions are your enemy.
Absolutely.
That when the market's good, if you feel good, don't. If you feel bad, you should probably do it.
Right.
But how did you? What was that extra thing where so many will acknowledge that, and yet we saw in the current crisis they panicked while you went into seemingly potential disasters like GE and Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. I can't really tell you the answer. I mean, I didn't learn in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. You know, and Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability.
All of you in this room have the brains to do extremely well in life. You've all got the energy to do extremely well in life, and then the question is, how do you apply it? If you've got a 200 horsepower motor, Do you get 200 horsepower out of it? Do you get your full potential, or do you get 100 horsepower or 50 horsepower? Now, there's two things that can hold you back in getting the full horsepower out of your engine, whatever it may be. All of you have big enough engines. And one of those is a lack of education. But that probably isn't going to happen to very many people in this room. If you did have a lack of education, if you didn't have a chance to get a decent education in life, it wouldn't make any difference what that potential was, because you'd never unlock it. But the second most important thing, and equally as important, is in terms of the habits that you develop, in terms of what you do with yourself. When we hire people, we look for three qualities. We look for integrity, we look for intelligence, and we look for energy. But if they don't have the first one, integrity, the other two will kill you. Because if you're hiring somebody without integrity, you really want them to be dumb and lazy, don't you? I mean, last thing in the world you want for them is to be smart and energetic. So smart and energetic only goes with integrity. You make your own decision on that. You can't change your IQ or how far you can throw a football or how high you can jump or the color of your hair very easily. But you can elect to have integrity that matches anybody else's. And if you match that with intelligence, which you have, and energy, which you have, you will get an extraordinary result, and you'd be very foolish to sell me 10% of yourself for $50,000. On the other hand, if you don't match it with that, your potential will, in a significant part, go unused. As a general matter, as a one piece of specific financial advice, I would say, avoid credit cards. Just forget about them. We're in various businesses that issue credit cards. The American public loves credit cards. But if you start revolving debt on credit cards, you're going to be paying 18 or 20%. And you can't make progress in your financial life going around borrowing money at 18 or 20%. You can make a lot of money by lending it out at 18 or 20% over time. If you can find anybody that's good that will borrow from you. But you don't want to be on the side of the equation that's always behind in life. I was lucky. I'd saved about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. That $10,000 was really worth millions I might have earned later on, because after you get a family and everything, the expenses roll in. But those were my tools to work with, but it was only because I was ahead of the game. If you're behind the game by $10,000 at some point and paying 18 or 20% interest on it, you will never, you'll never get out of it. So the trick, I've got a partner that says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. And that's true in financial matters as well. You want to figure out where you don't want to be ahead of time and avoid that. And I get about a dozen letters a day from people who are having terrible problems. And there are two reasons why they have terrible problems. One is a number of them have had health problems of some sort. I mean, they have really been hit by or somebody in their family has been hit by some kind of catastrophic illness. And that is it's a terrible thing to happen to any family. And they run up bills they can't pay, and really only society can solve that one in terms of protecting people against that. That's just plain bad luck. But the other one is from people who run up credit card debt, and they're facing bankruptcy, or they've been through bankruptcy once before, and they owe a whole bunch of money, and they can't even pay the interest, let alone pay any principal. And half of my letters come from people like that, and that problem is avoidable. Catastrophic illness is not, but credit card debt is something you bring on yourself, and it's way better, it's way easier to stay out of trouble than to get out of trouble financially. And I will guarantee you, if you run up big credit card debts, you will be in trouble probably the rest of your life in terms of your financial situation. On the other hand, if you get ahead of the game, even it's on a very modest scale, so that money is coming in from investing, and people owe you money, or equities owe you ownership, you'll be way ahead of the game compared to paying it, always paying your creditors every month. So my advice to you is, if you can't pay for it, don't buy it.
What are the best ways for youth to get started now in securing their financial future?
For what, to secure their financial future?
For youth.
Youth? Oh, well, it's not very complicated. It goes back to getting full use out of your own talents first. I mean, the difference between whether you're going to be earning X or 2X or 3X a year 20 years from now is going to be a function of how well, not how much talent you have, but how well you use the talent you already have. And so that is your best financial future is your own ability and your a capacity to use those abilities to their potential. And that can't be taken away from you. They can't even tax it. I mean, most things, if you own a piece of real estate, if they double the taxes, they double the taxes, and that changes your ownership in the property, because now, in effect, the taxing authorities own more of it because they've got a greater command on the revenue stream. The same thing about almost any asset you have, but they don't tax what's in your head, and they don't tax your ability to start performing when you get to work in the morning and finish in the evening to your potential. One of the things that amazes me is how people who really do perform well just sort of jump out at you once you're running a business. When I got out of school, I thought, everybody would behave that way, but they don't. Most people sort of go through life in a sleepwalk, and if you don't, you will stand out. So the biggest thing for your financial future is yourself.
Speaking of resources, let's talk a little bit about your decision to put your money with Bill and Melinda Gates. You are somebody, obviously, who's, arguably, not even arguably, definitively by numbers, the best in the world in terms of figuring out how to allocate capital. I mean, dollars don't lie, and then put it to work. And yet with philanthropy, you basically outsourced it. How did that?
That's true. But when my wife had a baby, I didn't deliver it either. I mean, I didn't fill my kids' teeth. I mean, Adam Smith in 1776 explained specialization of labor, and he did a pretty good job of it. And I feel I'm very good at piling up money, and my wife was very good at unpiling it. I mean, it's a very simple formula, and she was going to handle the philanthropy big time, and she did during her lifetime at a moderate level. But basically, I was going to turn it all over to her to handle, and I would pile up during my lifetime. And she died earlier, and therefore I had to make a decision as to what was the best way to use a very large sum of money and get my goals achieved through other people. And there are other people that are better than I am at all kinds of things. I mean, A-Rod's here. I mean, we're not going to get into a home run derby. So I believe in. I really do believe in getting people that are younger, more energetic, but also experienced. And in the case of Bill and Melinda, have their own money up as well. And they've got identical objectives really with me. Well, in 1973, the Washington Post company had gone public in 1971, right about the Pentagon Papers time. But in 73, the Nixon administration was, through B.B. Rebozo, who was a pal of Nixon's, they were challenging the licenses of two of the Florida television stations the Post owned. So the stock went from 37 down to 16. Now at 16, there were about 5 million shares outstanding. So the whole Washington Post company was selling for $80 million. And that included the newspaper, 4 big TV stations, Newsweek, and some other assets, and no debt to speak of. So the Washington Post company, which was intrinsically worth $400 or $500 million, was selling for about 80 million in the market. We bought most of our stock at about the equivalent of 100 million in the market, and it was ridiculous. I mean, you had a business that unquestionably was worth 4 or 5 times what it was selling for, and Nixon wasn't going to put them out of business.
When you're doing these analyses then and now, do you have computers that help you, or how did you actually read all? Did you just get printed materials, or how did you in those days get the materials to read about the Washington Post, and how do you do it today?
Well, pretty much the same way, except there's fewer opportunities now. But I met Bob Woodward back, and he'd just come out with all the president's men, and all of a sudden, below 30 years of age, he was getting quite wealthy, and we had breakfast or lunch over at the Madison Hotel. And he said, "What do I do with this money?" And I said, investing is just about assigning yourself the right story. I said, imagine Ben Bradley this morning said to you, what is the Washington Post company worth? What would you do? You have to write the story in a month. You'd go out and interview TV brokers and newspaper brokers and owners, and you'd try and value each asset. I said, that's what I do. I assign myself the right story. And it's nothing more than that. Now, there's some stories I can't write. If you ask me to write a story on, what is some glamorous but non-profit-making business worth. I don't know how to write that story. But if you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story, and that's what I'm doing every day. How do you turn failure into a plus? And it's true. When I was at the University of Nebraska, one day I was reading the Daily Nebraskan, and it said in room 300 or something, at 3 o'clock there will be this panel of 3 professors here at the university, and they're going to award the Nathan Gold Scholarship. I don't know whether you still have that around. And at the time, it said it would give you $500 to go to the graduate school of your choice. I don't know whether it's changed in amount, but that was it. So I read this, and I went there to this room at 3 o'clock that day, or whatever it was, and I walked in the room, and there were the professors, and I was the only student that showed up. I mean, it really got to them. I mean, they were stuck. They kept waiting and looking at their watch and hoping there'd be more candidates, but no one came in. So I won $500 by default. And those are usually my biggest triumphs when nobody else shows up. And so here I was. I had $500 to go toward it wasn't limited as any graduate school for a master's degree. So I applied to Harvard. My dad wanted me to. And I shortly heard from Harvard, and they said, go to Chicago and meet this fellow who interviews applicants from the Midwest. So I got on the train, and that's what you did in those days, and I spent about 10 hours on the Burlington going to Chicago. Then I transferred to another little interurban train to go up to this country day school where this fellow was the headmaster, and he was the big interviewer for Harvard. And I got there, and after about 10 minutes, he said, better think about something else. He come back later on. I was 19 at the time, and I looked about 12, and I acted about 8. So it was not a great combination, So he said, forget it. So I took the little interurban train back to Chicago, and I took the 10-hour train back to Omaha, and all the time I'm thinking, what do I tell my parents? It's kind of embarrassing. But it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Because if I'd gone to Harvard, I would have gone to a 2-year business school. I instead applied to Columbia, where I could graduate in 1 year and get a master's degree. Luckily, that by the accident of it and being in the Nebraska National Guard, which did not get called up for the Korean War, I missed going in the Korean War. I got to meet Ben Graham, which had an enormous effect on me subsequently. And I probably got my wife that way because she was going to Northwestern, and I was able to put on sort of a full court press because I got out in 1 year, and otherwise she'd have met some other guy. I mean, I got her before the competition showed up, and so it worked out wonderfully. It couldn't have worked out better, and that's been my life basically. I mean, things, you will get some disappointments, but the future is what counts. If I knew every decision I was going to make was going to be perfect, it would not be as much fun. It'd be like playing golf and knowing you're going to hit a hole-in-one on every hole. You wouldn't play golf if every time you got on a tee, you just took a swing and the ball ended up in the hole. It'd be fun for a few days and you get on TV, but the game would not be any fun. So it's failure, and I wouldn't even consider them failures, but they're mistakes or whatever you want to call it. They're part of the game, and in the end, you go on, and we've made plenty of mistakes in business. We'll make plenty more, and the Babe Ruth and for a long time, it subsequently got eclipsed by a few fellows, but he held the record for strikeouts. He also held the record for home runs and was the highest paid baseball player until the modern era came along. So it's part of the game. If you take big swings, you're going to miss sometimes. I have an old-fashioned belief that I should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general,
what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. You know, if you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. So figuring out the economic consequences, TV, I think there's, 20, 25 million sets a year sold in the United States. I don't think there's one of them made in the United States anymore. I mean, you'd say TV set manufacturer, what a wonderful business. I mean, everybody, nobody had a TV in 1950, or thereabouts, 45 to 50. Everybody has multiple sets now, but nobody in the United States has made any real money making the sets. They're all out of business. You know, the Magnavoxes, the RCAs, all of those companies. Radio was the equivalent of over 500 companies making radios in the 1920s. Again, I don't think there's a U.S. radio manufacturer at the present time. But Coca-Cola, what was it, 1884 at Jacobs Pharmacy or whatever, the fellow comes up with something. A lot of copiers over the years, but now you've got a company that is selling roughly 1.1 billion 8-ounce servings of its product, not all Coke, Sprite, and some others, daily throughout the world 117 years later. So understanding the economic characteristics of a business is different than predicting the fact that an industry is going to do wonderfully. And so when I look at the internet businesses, or I look at tech businesses, I say this is a marvelous thing, and I love to play around on the computer, and I order my books from Amazon and all kinds of things, but I don't know who's going to win. And unless I know who's going to win, I'm not interested in investing. I'll just play around on the computer. And defining your circle of competence is the most important aspect of investing. It's not how important, how large your circle is. You don't have to be an expert on everything. But knowing where the perimeter of that circle of what you know and what you don't know is, and staying inside of it, is all important. Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM, said in his book, he said, I'm no genius, he said, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. And that is the key. So if I understand a few things, and I stick in that arena, I'll do okay. And if I don't understand something, but I get all excited about it because my neighbors are talking about it, the stocks are going up and everything, I start fooling around someplace else, eventually I'll get creamed, and I should.
I don't need to be in Washington to figure out what the Washington Post newspaper is worth, and I don't need to be in New York to figure out what some other company is worth. It's simply an intellectual process. And the less static there is in that intellectual process, really the better off you are.
What is the intellectual process?
The intellectual process is defining your level, defining your area of competence in valuing businesses, and then within that area of competence, finding whatever sells at the cheapest price in relation to value. And there are all kinds of things I'm not competent to value, but there are a few that I am competent to value.
Have you ever bought a technology company?
No, I really haven't.
In 30 years of investing, not one?
I haven't understood any of them.
So you haven't ever owned, for example, IBM?
Never owned IBM. Marvelous company. I mean, a sensational company, but I haven't owned IBM.
And so here is this technological revolution going on, and you're not going to be a participant.
Gone right past me.
Is that all right with you?
It's okay with me. I don't have to make money in every game. I mean, I don't know what cocoa beans are going to do. There are all kinds of things I don't know about, and that may be too bad. But why should I know all about them? I haven't worked that hard on them. In the securities business, you literally every day have thousands of the major American corporations offered to you at a price that changes daily, and you don't have to make any decisions. You have to make nothing is forced upon you. So there are no called strikes in the business. The pitcher just stands there and throws balls at you, and if you're playing real baseball and it's between the knees and the shoulders, you either swing or you get a strike called on you. If you get too many called on you, you're out. In the securities business, you sit there and they throw U.S. Steel at 25, and they throw General Motors at 68, and you don't have to swing at any of them. They may be wonderful pitches to swing at, but if you don't know enough, you don't have to swing. And you can sit there and watch thousands of pitches, and finally you get one right there where you want it, something that you understand, and then you swing. And
so you might not swing for 6 months.
You might not swing for 2 years.
If you look around you at the people you admire, you know, they have certain qualities. I mean, you've got friends. Why do you like them? You know, generally, you know, generally they have an upbeat attitude on life. Generally, they are generous people. They're humorous people. They're people that do more than their share. They're people that are thinking about something nice they can do for you. And all of those qualities attract you. And none of those are innate at birth. I mean, you can acquire those. And then there's other people that turn you off, you know, and they have habits. They take credit for things they didn't do. They don't show up on time, whatever it may be. They're a little dishonest about things. And if you're looking at your life at a young age like you are, and you can choose what kind of a person you can be, why not be the person you admire rather than the person you can't stand? It's so simple. So just write down the qualities you like. Take your 5 best friends. Why do you like them? And just write down those qualities. And you will find there's no quality there that you can't have yourself. And similarly with the 5 people you can't stand to be around, put those things down that turn you off about those people. And if they turn you off about them, why should you possess them? It's so simple. You know, it's not like something complicated that you think you should be learning with an advanced degree in school.
It's not as complicated as investing in the stock market.
No, but it's enormously important to have people work with you in life. Right. They're going to work with you in life if they like you. You know, and they may occasionally, I mean, if you're in the Army or something, you know, you may work for somebody that you don't like. But by and large, you're going to get the best out of people if they feel good about you. And it's just so easy, but you've got to develop the habits early, because you can't say I'm going to suddenly become a terribly attractive person when I'm 60. It just doesn't work that way. So pick up the right habits now. And I will guarantee you, if you actually just write down those qualities and think about it, you will find you can have every one of the attractive qualities, get rid of the ones that are negative, and your life will be different.
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes. Biggest mistake, well, not the biggest, necessarily the biggest, but buying Berkshire Hathaway itself was a mistake, because Berkshire was a lousy textile business, and I bought it very cheap. I'd been taught by Ben Graham to buy things on a quantitative basis. Look around for things that are cheap. And that I was taught that, we'll say in 1949 or 50. It made a big impression on me. So I went around looking for what I call used cigar butts of stocks. And the cigar butt approach to buying stocks is that you walk down the street and you're looking around for cigar butts, and you find this on the street, this terrible looking, soggy, ugly looking cigar, 1 puff left in it. But you pick it up and you get your 1 puff. Disgusting, you throw it away, but it's free. I mean, it's cheap. And then you look around for another soggy, you know, 1 puff cigarette. Well, that's what I did for years. It's a mistake. Although you can make money doing it, but you can't make it with big money. It's so much easier just to buy wonderful businesses. So now I would rather buy a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. But in those days, I was buying cheap stocks. And Berkshire was selling below its working capital per share. You got the plants for nothing, you got the machinery for nothing, you got the inventory and receivables at a discount. It was cheap, so I bought it. And 20 years later, I was still running a lousy business, and that money did not compound. You really want to be in a wonderful business, because the time is the friend of the wonderful business. You keep compounding, it keeps doing more business, and you keep making more money. Time is the enemy of the lousy business. I could have sold Berkshire, perhaps liquidated it, and made a quick little profit, you know, 1 puff. But staying with those kind of businesses is a big mistake. So you might say I learned something out of that mistake, and I would have been way better off taking what I did with Berkshire is I kept buying better businesses. I started the insurance business, See's Candy, the Buffalo, all kinds of things. I would have been way better doing that with a brand new little entity that I'd set up, rather than using Berkshire as the platform. Now I've had a lot of fun out of it. I mean, everything in life seems to turn out for the better, so I don't have any complaints about that, but it was a dumb thing to do. I went into U.S. Air. I bought a preferred stock in 1989. As soon as my check cleared, the company went into the red and never got out. I mean, it was really dumb. I mean,
I've got an 800 number I call now whenever I think about buying an airline stock. I call them up any hour that, fortunately, I can call them at 3 in the morning, and I just dial and I say, my name's Warren, I'm an aeroholic, and I'm thinking about buying this thing, and then they talk me down. I mean, it takes hours sometimes, but it's worth it, believe me. If you ever think about that buying an airline stock, call me and I'll give you the 800 number, because you don't want to do it. But we got lucky in terms of how we eventually came out on it, but it was a dumb decision.
I was wondering how you define success personally.
Well, I can certainly define happiness, because that's what I am. I mean, I get to do what I like to do every single day of the year, and I get to do it with people I like, and I don't have to associate with anybody. Causes my stomach to churn. The only thing in my job I don't like, and this only happens about every 3 or 4 years, occasionally I have to fire somebody, and I don't like. That's the only thing. Other than I tap dance to work, and I get down there and I think I'm supposed to lie on my back and paint the ceiling, or something like Michelangelo. I mean, that's the way I feel, and it doesn't diminish. It's tremendous fun. So, if they say that success is getting what you want and happiness is wanting what you get. Well, I don't know which one applies in this case, but I do know that I wouldn't be doing anything else. I mean, I do advise you, when you go out to work, go to work for an organization that you admire, people you admire, because it'll turn you on, and you ought to be happy where you are working. And I always worry about people who say, I'm going to do this for 10 years. I really don't like it very well, and then I'll do 10 more years of this. I mean, that's a little like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, not a very good idea. So get right in.
You would recommend that.
Get right into what you enjoy, and you'll be successful at it. You really will. I mean, you won't be able to miss. And that's. I don't regard what I do as the most important thing in the world at all, but it's right for me. I mean, I happen to be wired in a certain way that what I do works in this. If I had to do what Bill does, I mean, it lasts about 10 minutes. And that's true of a lot of things, but luckily I kind of stumbled into the thing that I do best, and that it's worked out well.
Warren is probably the most rational person I've ever met. Charlie Munger would be a close rival. And Charlie became a man that Warren depended on heavily. And I think his first experiences in the discarded cigar butt era convinced him that it was not exactly where he wanted to be.
He'd made so much money for so long doing what he'd been taught by Ben Graham, which is to buy these very cheap stocks. And if they were cheap enough, he didn't care if it was a lousy company and a lousy management. He knew he was going to make money anyway just because of the cheapness.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise. We were mental partners right from the moment we met.
I want to know, going back 50 years, what it was like when you first met Warren.
Well, I thought he was a prodigy. And I got a lot of criticism. My wife said, "Why are you paying such enormous respect to that young man with a crew cut who won't eat vegetables?"
He's ungodly smart. He's got a much broader intellect than I do. And he's magnificent at being able to condense important ideas into just a very few words.
If you're not interested in the economic scene right now, you're mentally dead.
Charlie has no tact.
All right, let's talk a little bit about bankers. Charlie on Friday compared them to heroin addicts.
Yeah, well, that's colorful, Charlie, but I would not have chosen that.
I once wrote of him that when they handed out humility, he didn't get his fair share.
The ideal way to run a headquarters is to have one man, preferably over 80, sitting in an office by himself. Anything else is pure frippery.
He's always honest in what he tells me, so I listen to him.
We never had an argument. We just kind of roll with it easily. Suppose Warren doesn't want to do something that I would have done. And suppose that happens 4 times over 40 years or something. What difference does it make to me? Net, the record is working out fine.
If you buy a business, if you buy a farm, do you go up and look, every couple of weeks to see how far the corn is up? And, do you worry too much about whether somebody says this is going to be a year of low prices because exports are being affected or anything like that? You buy a farm and you hold it for, I've got one farm that I bought in the 1980s and my son runs it, but I've been there once, I mean, it doesn't grow faster if I go and stare at it, I can't cheer for it, more effort or something like that. And I know there's going to be some years when prices are going to be good and some when the prices aren't going to be good. I know there's years when yields will be better than others, but I bought the farm. And if it just doesn't, I don't care about economic predictions on it or anything of the sort. I do care that over the years it's well tended to in terms of rotating crops, and I hope yields get better, which they generally have. In fact, that farm 100 years ago would have probably produced 30 bushels, maybe 35 bushels of corn per acre. And now in a good year, it'd be 200. I mean, we've really made progress in this country. That's one reason commodity prices, if you go back a couple hundred years, they've moved so little, is because we've just gotten better and better at whether it's cotton or whether it's corn or soybeans or all kinds of things. And you and I have benefited from that.
And so Apple's kind of like a farm.
Well, it's a long-term investment, and if you own the best auto dealership in town, the best brand, and you had somebody good running it, you wouldn't drop by every day and say, how many people have come in today, or I think interest rates are going up a little, maybe it'll slow down our sales or anything. No, you buy it knowing there's 365 days a year, and you're going to own it for 20 years, so that's 7,300 days, and things are going to be different from day to day and year to year. You shouldn't buy it at the day-to-day stuff. The question is about the personal qualities we look for in the executives we place at our various companies. The first thing is we don't usually place them. I mean, they come with them. We don't have anybody to place. So I have the problem occasionally, if somebody dies, or to replace a CEO, but most of our CEOs came with the deal. Clayton Homes, which we're buying, comes with Kevin Clayton running it. We will put no one in there. He will run the place just as before. But in terms of the personal quality, when a seller comes to me with a business, whether it's Clayton or any of the others, Ike Friedman at Borsheim's, Mrs. B at Nebraska Furniture Mart, when they come to me, the first question I have to ask myself, because I'm counting on them to run the place, I have to decide, do they love the money or do they love the business? Now, there's nothing wrong with liking the money. I mean, they all like money, but they've got to love the business. They've got to have a passion for it. Because if I give them a whole bunch of money and they love the money and they don't love the business, no matter what they tell me, 6 months from now they'll be gone. I mean, they'll just all of a sudden say, why am I getting up at 7 in the morning just so I can send a lot of money to Omaha? I mean, it won't work. So they have to love the business. I mean, I want people with a passion for the business. I used to say that I had a one-line employment form, one-question employment form. The question was, are you a fanatic? If you answered yes, you got the job. Because I want somebody who's fanatic about their business.
If you want another amazing Warren Buffett video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Somebody told me 10 years ago what was going to happen in the next 10 years. We could have made a lot of money in the bond market together, but there's always a reason afterwards.